Welcome to The Fight with Teddy Atlas. I'm Ken Rideout, joined as always by Hall of Fame broadcaster Teddy Atlas. Special quarantine edition of the show and Mother's Day episode. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Teddy, I wanted to get your thoughts on UFC 249, but before we do, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for asking. Good, thank God. Main thing is my family. Everybody's good, and they're healthy. We're happy. We have I don't know if I mentioned this on the last episode, but I have my daughter and her husband and two children, two of our grandchildren. We have three. One of them lives in California with my son Teddy, but we're blessed to have, they sold their house in New Jersey, and while they're looking for a new house, they're living with us. So they all moved in here a couple weeks ago, probably about 2.5 weeks ago, and the house is alive again, Ken. We're young again. You know, we have, I have a 2.5-year-old grandson and a 6-month-old granddaughter here living with us. And, you know, it's back to those times where there's a little face on top of you at 6:30 in the morning, you know, 7 o'clock and saying, wake up, Papa. Getty up, Papa. Getty up, Papa. So that's special.
Yep.
They're all healthy and we're all together, and you know it's good. It's good. I'm catching up all my kid movies, the Bees, the Bee movie, the dogs, all the dinosaur movies, Paw Patrol. You know, we're past Paw Patrol. That's old news now.
I know them all. Those opening jingles from the Paw Patrol are like etched into my head forever.
Yeah, Paw Patrol, Paw Patrol.
Hey, first live sports event last night. I don't know about you, but I don't think I missed a single second of this. I was telling my wife I was looking forward to it for like 2 weeks. I told her, please keep the kids out of here. I really want to watch this. It's the only thing I've been looking forward to. And in my opinion, the event lived up to all expectations. I thought it was an awesome card, but on a broader level, curious to hear your thoughts on Dana White. A lot of divisiveness over the decision to go forward with this, and I think some people have chosen to make it very political. And as an example, Arum came out and was very, very critical of Dana White, but at the same time he's also super critical of Trump. And Trump had a pre-recorded message for Dana White and the UFC fans, which I thought was interesting during a sporting event, that the president took time to send a special message of congratulations to the UFC and Dana White. Curious to hear your take on the whole thing and in all regards.
I can't help but chuckle just a tiny bit, Ken, because when it comes to Bob Arum, if like Trump somehow could become like a sponsor of his tomorrow, he'd be okay. You know what I mean? I mean, it's
yes,
the same guy who was caught lying one time at a press conference, and he just brushed it off and said because when the newspaper guys asked him, but you said the opposite yesterday. I mean, literally yesterday you said the opposite. He said, well, yesterday I was lying. Today I'm telling the truth. So I mean, really,
that to me, that quote personifies boxing and boxing promotions. And I'm not saying that Dana White is a saint by any means, but he has full control, so he can do whatever he wants. But that's why boxing is kind of taking their cues from the UFC. That's why when Canelo, the biggest draw in the sport, has a fight, they make the fans wait 90 minutes till he goes in and fights for a light heavyweight title so that they can air the UFC in the arena. I mean, how much more emasculating can that be?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Adam just has no credibility for me. You know, he's been a tremendous promoter. We give him his due, of course. Longevity, 7 decades, somewhere in that neighborhood, at least 6. But I mean, we've all heard it. I've heard him say that a certain fighter that was under his guidance, under his shield, his company's banner of promotion was better than Ali, and then if the guy a half a year later was with a new promoter, the guy's that guy couldn't box his way out of a paper bag. It's it's just the extremities of the extremes of him is just boundless. There's no limitations to where he'll go with anything that serves him at the time, or obviously is something that he wants to say because he's taking a shot at somebody else and it suits him. But as far as the show was a good show. I mean, I love to see the pay-per-view numbers. I love to get because you would think, you talk about that old saying, a captive audience. I mean, this is what it was. This is one time that saying is right on the mark. That's a captive audience. Usually you hear about those things and there's truth to them, where if you go into an arena to watch a ball game and you have to pay $10 for a draft beer or $6 for a bottle of water or $6, $7 for a hot dog, you're like, what? Where would you ever pay that? It's a captive audience. That's where you have no choice. Mm-hmm. So that's, this is the first time maybe in the history of television, of sports, where you truly had a captive audience, where, people had nowhere else to go. Just like being in an arena. You have nowhere else to go. If you want a hot dog, you got to pay $7. If you wanted to watch sports and you haven't watched it for 2 months, you had nowhere to go. There was one place to go. Again, we're saying, I think, the obvious, but sometimes things that aren't brought out as the obvious. So Dana White was pretty smart. Now look, now's the other part. Was he responsible? In the midst of all this, and I think he was. I think we haven't heard anything negative. We heard that one of the trainers, one of the fighters, tested positive for the virus, but in a way that speaks to a good job they're doing. It speaks to the system they put, the protocol they put in place before they did this, that they were able to find that out and keep them isolated from anyone else, which is what the protocol was. That was the way he had it organized, or the way that the structure of it was. So he had them isolated so they didn't infect anyone else. But his testing and his protocol found that these guys were positive, where otherwise you never would have known.
That's right.
There were no symptoms. You never would have known.
It was Jacare Souza, and to the UFC's credit, that kid would have never known he has no symptoms at all, nor did his I think 2 trainers, at least one, I think 2. They could have been out infecting countless amounts of other people. They had no symptoms at all. They were able to identify the guys who had the virus, isolate them, send them out of there, and wherever they went. Souza lives in Orlando. The event was in Jacksonville, so I imagine he could have just drove himself home and isolated. But you could make the argument that they actually did the testing, helped someone.
I agree 100%. And so they look. It seems, again, it's early. All the reviews haven't come in, but it would seem that they did a responsible job. And then getting to the athletic part of it, they did a responsible job from the part of it that was the danger of the virus, with handling that. Obviously no audience. And so all the things that they did, and the testing, and very, very thorough, extreme, proper testing.
The way I understand it is everyone is tested multiple times. Tested before you arrive, tested when you arrive, or tested upon arrival. Everyone's isolated during the process.
And that's what you need. And it just seems that, especially if you're going to do what Dana White's doing right now, bringing sports back, bringing a contact sport where obviously you're in the same vicinity of each other and you're sweating all over each other and everything else that I don't have to go over. You better have the testing down pat.
Yep. I was just going to say, it's funny that as soon as he comes out and he's getting obviously a lot of attention, and look, the people who want sports are excited, and it's also, from everything I've seen, and there's so much contradictory information out there on the virus, but it looks like the people who are really susceptible are really elderly people with pre-existing conditions. But nevertheless, he put on the show, it was a lot of buzz, and certain people in sports just couldn't help taking shots at him. And one of those people was Oscar De La Hoya. Someone asked him something about fighting Conor McGregor, and he said something to the effect of, "I'll beat him in less than 2 rounds." And Dana came back and they asked him at the press conference for the event, like, "What do you think about Oscar?" And Dana just kind of dismissed it like Oscar's crazy. And Oscar came back with a tweet, I think on Friday night, but at night, and he said, "Dana, you're such a little bitch. You never laced up a glove other than being a boxing aerobics teacher. The Fertitta brothers are the ones who built the business, and you were lucky enough to just have 10% of the UFC, little bitch." And again, Dana has like just kind of brushed it off, but it's like if anyone else is getting attention, the others just come out of the bushes like, "Hey, what about me? I'm here too." Then he deleted that tweet and then came back with the saying, "For the record, McGregor, I never challenged you. I just asked a question and I simply spoke the truth." But it's just funny watching everyone scramble for every ounce of attention that when the only attention right now seems to be for the UFC. They're the only ones that are doing anything or even have a plan. And I'll be curious to see how boxing reacts and what the plan is going forward. Are they going to have fights with no fans? I mean, I hope they do. I hope that they can get not all these guys are like making tons of money, right?
I don't see any other way they can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to go without fans. I mean, I think that's the first part of it, of the equation.
Yeah.
The rest of it has to be figured out and everything, the training and everything else, the pre-stuff. Where are they training? Are they being tested all the way up, to the event? How often are they being tested? What kind of testing? All that stuff. But it's strange times, Ken, when we're tracking De La Hoya tweets. You know what I mean? We're in a strange place, brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We really are. All I'd say about all that nonsense is that you could take shots at anybody for anything if you don't care about parameters of accuracy or legitimacy. You could always take shots at people if you have an agenda or if you have a hate in you to do that. We see it on the internet all the time. People are hating and they're not even necessarily thinking about what they're saying. They're just motivated by the hate, but or not the accuracy of what they might be saying. They might have a tidbit of something and that's enough for them. But I don't think you can argue whether it was the Fertitta brothers or not, the casino owners that started UFC. Yeah, Dana White's done a pretty damn good job of developing it. Pretty damn good job, of taking the business and getting it to where it is. But getting the show is a good show. I think it was like a Broadway smash. It's like the first night Broadway opens up with something new, because even though UFC's not new, it's new now. It's new now coming back this way with no crowd noise, everything else. People talked about that. And I think at the end of the day, if we were reviewers, if we were the guys that were reviewing plays, oh, God help us. But if we were, oh, boy, it was a smash hit. It was a smash hit, and a brutal sport. I'll get more into it as you take me to the fights, but also just I gotta just say it the way I feel it. It's a beautiful. There's some beauty in brutality sometimes when you can see, and I know that sounds crazy, But when you can see the level and just the amount of toughness, when you can see somebody that excellent in just the department of toughness, we applaud excellence in different things, Ken. If we see somebody figure skating, beautiful pirouette, really beautiful, magnificent. All the time it took and the dedication it took to perform that. Really, we applaud it. We should. We notice it, even if we're not ice skating experts or ice skating aficionados. But we see the brilliance of it, and we applaud it. Gymnastics, whatever. And we never talk about the excellence of brutality. I know it's crazy, but the level of toughness to be able to withstand brutality, the level of commitment and training mentally, physically, emotionally, that it takes to be able to have that capacity to endure. If it's a runner like you're a runner, Rob's a runner, we applaud your ability to develop your lungs to a capacity further than a normal person, where you can endure more, where you have the capacity to run longer, that your lungs can hold more oxygen longer. It didn't happen just by being born that way, unless you're Lance Armstrong. Maybe it did, that he was born with a little bit more. And I'm not being a wise guy here because of PEDs later on in his career. But from what I read,
he had a naturally high VO2
he
max.
Did. That's right. And I read about that. So, but I'm talking about the regular guy that works so freaking hard to get an edge on anyone else, to do something better than anyone else, or better than most people. The dedication it takes to do that, the pain it takes to go through to get to that place. Well, to get to a place, to be able to live within the octagon where some brutal acts can take place, to get to that place, to be able to navigate yourself through that pain and through that turmoil, that everything that's part of it, the fear, the everything that's part of it. It'd be like me applauding a lion tamer, that you could get in a lion's cage. Oh, instead of just saying, no, this is a good view from here. Are those bars are those bars thick? Are they thick? That is locked, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a nice view. Yeah, it's a beautiful teeth, beautiful mane. What a roar. Wow. But I ain't getting in a freaking cage. But to be able to develop yourself and control your fears and to train yourself to be able to open that door and go in that cage. No matter what edge you have, you're still going in that freaking cage. To be able to get in that octagon and go through what these guys go through. I mean, the torture, the physical brute force and damage that's part of that environment. To train yourself to handle that, and to handle it like somebody else would handle eating a double scoop ice cream. and say, yeah, this is really good, and not make any more of it. You see these guys when they're busted up and when it's over with, how it's just part of their day. It's just they're not talking about the gash over their eye or the elbows that they took right on the freaking nose or right on the chin. An elbow. It's enough to take a fist, but an elbow.
Yep.
Or the foot that they took on the side of their head. To not even make much mention of it. It was my job. And I was prepared for that job. And I prepared myself to be able to go through that. I prepared we don't give enough understanding. I'm not even going to say credit, but enough understanding of what it takes to do that. And listen, what they're doing it for their families, for themselves, for something inside them. It's not just the money, for something inside them. That they must answer some kind of call to find out something about yourself. We all have that call. It's just a matter of how loud is it? How loud is it?
It has to be more than money. You couldn't pay me enough money to get in there.
But it's similar. I agree. It's similar to what these heroes, and I never use that word unless it's in the cases that I'm about to attach it to. These heroes are armed service men and women that prepare themselves to go and protect us, to go and be ready to die, because that's part of their job. And what they put themselves, the SEALs, the Army Rangers, all of them, the Marines, all of them. I salute you all if you're listening. But all of you, and I appreciate you all, and my family does, because they're brought up to. But what they put themselves through to become those people, to become prepared, we lose sight of that. We look at the guys, the basketball players that perform unbelievable athletic feats on that court, and how hard they work since they're 7, 6, 5, 10 years old. And we applaud that, and we understand that. Or the football players, or the baseball guy that can hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball that's moving, that's not even coming straight. I mean, we applaud that, and it's applaudable. But what about applauding these people that develop their mind to the point, their mind, their fortitude, they chisel it. They take it like you take a sword and you put it into molten lead to forge it into that sword so it'll stand up, so it won't break in combat. That's what they do. That's what they do to make themselves that person, those people. I watched that, and I just needed to say that it's really, I know they're not going out there and saving people's lives the way the armed service people are. I understand the separation. Nobody has to tell me. But they're going out there, they're entertaining us. They're going out there answering the call that they have to answer. They're taking care of their families. This is the way they're doing, and of themselves. It's pretty extraordinary. It's pretty damn extraordinary.
Yeah.
And having said all that, I'm going to move it into what I always talk about for the 23 years I'm calling fights on ESPN. What I always talk about. With all of that, and they're all tough, but with all of that, it still comes down. And this is where people are going to say, wow, maybe they'll agree, maybe they won't. But I believe there's evidence to agree, where there's a similarity, an attachment to boxing, and the same things of the top guys, where it's not the toughest guy that wins. They're all tough. It's the guy who's smarter. It's the guy who's more prepared. It's the guy who has a better strategy. It's the guy who's got the discipline to stand up and execute that strategy in a consistent manner all night in those danger zones. Because we'll go through the specific fights, but each one of them that I saw, they're equally tough, but it was the guy who had the better plan. It was the guy who was just a little smarter in those areas that became tougher, that won the day, that victory was theirs. It makes me think about years ago, back in the 70s, 80s, there was one of my favorite fighters, Danny Little Red Lopez, featherweight champ of the world. Oh, and Rob would get it up there for everybody, but unbelievable tough. Ken? Unbelievable, and a good right-hand puncher. And then he fights a guy at the time nobody really knew him. People knew him, but not the world. A guy named Salvador Sanchez. Quiet. We didn't see proof of his toughness. You know why? Because he was so smart. He didn't have to show it. But it was there. It was there when the day would be called upon to show it, like when he fought Azuma Nelson 15 rounds. But he goes in there and he destroys my favorite, my guy, Danny Little Red. Lopez. He destroys him because he was more developed in those other areas, smarter. Yeah. The other guy was so tough. And I saw a reminder of those things. I was reminded of those things watching, that you could get caught up in just the toughness, the brutality, which I applaud, that they get themselves to that level. I don't applaud that people are killing each other. I just applaud that you could develop yourself to become that dependable. Wouldn't you want a guy like that as a friend?
Yeah.
See, I know I take it to different places, but I think it's the right places. Wouldn't you want a guy like that as your friend? That he could go through that torment and not break because it's important not to break? Yeah, I would. And I think that's where character intertwines and mixes with all of these sports, these vocations in other areas, where it's business maybe, and you have to trust a financial broker. You want to know that it's more important for him not to betray you than it is to make money.
Yeah.
That he has that endurance, that he has developed that, the way these guys have developed that. And but throughout, you'll take me through the fights, you'll take us through the fights when you're ready. But that's what I saw every time. I saw the guy that had the better plan, the guy who was technically better, the guy who was, for the most part, was that match with his toughness, and it made him tougher. It made him superior. It made him the winner.
To your point, I was thinking as I was watching some of the fights, because a lot of them were very strategic. There were a few quick ones, but a lot of them, like the first one that we'll talk about is Greg Hardy. Not the most technical guy, doesn't have a ton of experience, but I was thinking about it in terms of a chess match. It's like, hey, okay, we're playing chess. Oops, I made a mistake there. Oh, I got you right there. Here's a punch in the face. Oh, you made another mistake there. Here's a kick in the ribs. And so let's kick it off with that first fight, Greg Hardy against...
By the way, painful chess.
Very painful. Yorgan de Castro. I got to be honest, every time I see Hardy fight, just because of his lack of experience, I think this is it. Now he's going to step up in competition. This guy's going to be the one who gets him, and he just keeps winning. Former Dallas Cowboy, I think linebacker, just a super athlete. Obviously, to be able to fight in the UFC with such little experience. I don't think he's been fighting for 3 years.
Was he a linebacker or was on the defensive line? I don't know myself, but defensive end. Rob just...
okay, yeah. But just a big athletic guy.
A guy that athletic could be moved to linebacker too. But I know he was very good at sacking the quarterback. That's why.
Yes.
Listen, first thing that struck me, he screwed up his NFL career. Again, well, we're always honest. Well, we try to be, and get it out there. If we know what we need to know, he screwed up his career. Tremendous. I think he was the top guy in the whole NFL with sacks 1 year, and he was a Pro Bowler. Extraordinary.
Yes.
And
superstar.
He was signing a huge contract. Huge. I don't know if it was $100 million, whatever it was. It was one of those crazy contracts. Extreme. And he blew it. And then he took this up. First thing that was consistent for me, looking at it from my eyeballs, unbelievable athlete. You just said it. Size, everything else.
Yeah.
I'm watching this guy throw kicks. I'm watching this guy at his size, an NFL football size, throwing kicks, making moves, doing this, and spots. I saw that he's green. I saw that it's still, obviously a new sport for him, that he's still going through the process of learning it. He didn't start like he did in football when he was 7, 8, 9 years old playing Pee Wee. I get it. but you can't help but see, you can't miss the special athletic qualities that he has. I mean, extraordinary. And he had a better reach than De Castro. He used that with his jab. He's taller, longer. You want to see that. That's what I'm looking for. He's got all these attributes, these physical advantage. Does he have the discipline? Does he have the teaching to use them? That's what I'm looking for. It's not consistent because of what you just touched on, Ken. He hasn't been around doing it long enough. But I saw the special athletic qualities that you don't see in everybody. And then I noticed what I've learned over my 45 years in boxing, that you can't always judge a book by a cover. You see De Castro, he's chubby, he's squat, but he has fast hands. He had really fast hands. And I always wonder, and I'm being a little bit of a jerk right now, but you know that I respect all these guys, so I think if I qualify it the right way and I say it the right way, I can say it. Because I do respect these guys and I show it. I think every day I do stuff like this, and the way I live my life in this business of combat sports. But I found over the years, you just find out certain things, that there's consistencies, and I found that these heavy guys, plump, all right, fat, whatever, sometimes, but whatever, that you wouldn't think, they're not body beautiful. You wouldn't think that they fit the description of a fighter, whether it's Ruiz, whoever. But a lot of them, and going way back before Ruiz, they got fast hands.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. I always see them. There's a whole bunch of them, but they always have fast hands. And now the part I'm going to be a wise guy. Maybe they developed it at the dinner table where they were they were you know what I mean? Wasn't there like a pork chop on my plate like a minute ago? Where'd it go? The fast-handed man got it. So I'm kidding around with that, but it's really remarkable that, and this guy, so I wasn't shocked. I saw the fast hands. I've seen that, but I also saw what he did in the second and third round. He went into survival mode. Like he didn't try to win anymore. And that's where you go into the character and everything else. You got to have the whole package.
At one point, he was having huge success with the leg kicking the left leg of the lead leg of Greg Hardy. And I think at the interview afterwards, Hardy said at one point he checked the kick and it looked like Castro might have broken his toes. Yeah, and he stopped kicking. But what was funny is when they asked Hardy about it afterwards, when he started checking, he goes, "Oh, I heard DC, the announcer, because there's no crowd, say he better start checking those kicks." So I started checking them. And as soon as I did, he hurt his foot, and I saw him. He jumped like he couldn't control the reaction when he hurt his foot kicking his shit.
See, that's very interesting, and it is, because we're talking about obviously, a lot of people are talking about the negative aspect of not having a crowd, the feeling, the juice, maybe even a fight is being attached to that, playing off of it, feeding off of it, whatever. The broadcasters feeding off. I fed off it as a broadcast. I would feel it if we had a really animated crowd, a really boisterous, emotional, invested crowd, not just a dull crowd, not just a casino crowd, but a crowd that really had a vested interest in the fighters, and you felt it. It got you. It woke you up. It affected you. It impacted you. It was like having a cup of coffee before you do the. It got you going a little bit. It carried you sometimes. But having said what you said, you brought up a great point to talk about what they said, and in that way, it was an advantage to the fighters that they could hear that and their mind get a little information and confidence that, hey, maybe the guy's hurt.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about it is it always comes down to the toughness here. Always. And yeah, he hurt his toe. He might have broke his toe. Maybe. But guess what? You want to be what these guys are? You fight with a broken toe. I know that sounds like, oh, it's easy for you to say. No, it's not easy for me to say. But I am saying something that is part of the responsibility of that world.
Yep.
These guys, you saw the brutality of it. These guys with the cuts, with a broken nose, a broken jaw, whatever. Muhammad Ali fought Ken Norton in the second round. He had a broken jaw. He didn't say, I got a broken jaw, get me out of here. Whatever. How many times we see football players play a tremendous game, but something's broken or they got a shot for something. Come on. Are you kidding me? The first day camp opens up in the NFL. Nobody is healthy anymore. Nobody's healthy. It's just a matter of what degree and how far you're willing to tolerate it. And it's part of the turf. It's part of the turf. It's part of the deal. It is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the guy might have broke his toe. But, and I'm going to say this, so what? And so what? The fight after you, the guy's probably going to break his cheekbone or he's going to break his eye socket. But he's going to make a decision to go on or not go on because it's part of the turf. It's part of the territory. It's part of the job. And those are the guys, and that's where you separate guys. That's one of the places. It's not just athleticism. That's one of the places you separate guys. And that's one of the things that was separating in that fight.
And speaking of the next fight and injuries, Calvin Kattar, Boston's own, stops Jeremy Stephens via knockout, dropped him with a beautiful punch and then jumped on him and hit him with an elbow that opened a gash on his head that was just ferocious. I mean, blood was just spewing out of it for several minutes. But that was an interesting one because it was all stand-up, and Kattar is known for being a slow starter, and he seemed to take his time. I thought Stephens won the first round, but Kattar was like being very strategic, taking his time, figuring him out. And once he did start to figure him out, he started to light him up. But that's to your point about the lack of a crowd and hearing what's going on. You could hear, I think, the two trainers talking to the two fighters, which I enjoyed. And then I think at some point, Kattar even spoke back to the trainer in the middle of the round, telling him that he heard something that he said, like, hey, I got it. And but that was one that ended with a brutal cut, brutal injury. What were your thoughts on that one?
My thoughts on that one, first of all, Kattar impressed me as one of the better strikers that I've seen in the UFC. I'm not saying I'm suddenly a UFC aficionado, but I'm watching. I'm watching now, and I understand something about fighting. And whether it's MMA fighting or boxing, my sport, I recognize what separates people and what makes people, special or not special, and the consistencies, the parallels in both sports. This guy's a good striker. I mean, McGregor, I know, is a tremendous striker, but this guy struck me, Kattar, as, wow, he's one of the better ones I've seen. For myself, that's what, I don't know what the word on him is out there. I don't have a scouting report on him, other than I depend on my own scouting. That's how I have always kind of done it. And that's what I saw. I also saw a lot of pride. They all have pride, but it comes out to special ones. Like after he knocks him out, he's so proud. He's so what he is. He's that kind of guy. These guys are those kind of guys. And he says, well, I didn't like the fact. Respectful, but tough and strong and honest. Yeah. Not everybody would be that honest and say it. And maybe some people wouldn't see the reason to say it. But I understood it. He said, I didn't like the way he disrespected me, he being Stephens, coming in 4.5 pounds heavy. I see that. That wasn't missed on me. That wasn't missed on me. I said, this is the real deal here. These are the real warriors over here. They live by a code. You know what I mean, Ken? And he broke the code.
Yeah.
Like this son of a bee.
For sure.
Yeah, we just fought. We went in there. I respect him. We fought like men. And I conquered. And I give him his due for getting in there with me. But I didn't like that he broke the code. And he came in heavy. I didn't like that crap, that disrespect.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I always feel bad for the guy that did make weight, because the kid misses weight by 4.5 pounds, which, I mean, at that point it might as well be 20, right? I mean, that's so egregious. It's insane. And then the promotion then turns to the guy who made weight and says, hey, we'll give you an extra 20% of his dough if you'll take this fight. So now you've got a guy that 5 pounds is a huge advantage when you're talking about a guy who's drained and cutting a lot of weight. And then it's on the guy who made weight to be the good guy or the bad guy and say, yeah, I'll fight him even though he's 5 pounds heavier. I almost feel like at a certain point it should be like, no, we're not even going to put you in that awkward position. He's out. After a certain point of weight, if you miss by more than 2-3 pounds, we're not even going to put you. Why is it on him to say, okay, I'll take a fight with a guy that's like much bigger than me?
Very good point to bring it up. In boxing, I'm sure the UFC must have some kind of rule. But in boxing, they do have an allowance. They do have a cutoff. Certain amount. The problem is there's no unilateral conformity with freaking boxing. Every state has their own rules. It's part of the problem. I've been fighting about that for years. But certain commissions will have a cutoff, like you can't lose more than 10% of your weight or whatever it is. You can't lose more than 3 pounds. You can't lose more than 4 pounds, whatever it is. But up to that, you can make a deal with money, like you said. You could go and say, hey, is it okay? Go talk to the camp and make a deal. They give you another $1,000, whatever. Okay, we'll fight. Or sometimes I've seen it where there's no fight. There's pressure to make the fight on the guy. You brought up a good point. The pressure's always on the good guy.
Yeah.
It's always on the good. But the reason is because when television especially is involved, you got to have to fight. You got the airtime. You got to have to fight. I mean, You could go and go down the list and then say, all right, who's one of the preliminary guys that was not on TV? You're on TV now. You're getting more money, you're on TV. But you might not want that fight on TV because it's not as good a fight. It's not as competitive a fight. That's why it was a preliminary. So there's pressure on the good guy. Hey, come on, we got to put this, and there's pressure on it attacks your manhood. That's what they do. Like, come on, you're still going to fight, right?
Exactly. Why should he have to even make that decision?
And you make a good point. But it is the nature of the business that there's going to be pressure put in. Not everyone's going to live up to that contract. Not everybody's going to live up to their commitment. Hey, it's part of the deal sometimes, and you could just say, hey, the fight's off. But again, there's other things to consider here. There's fights to put on TV. You got to have the fights. So that's part of it. And then there's two ways to look at it too, Ken. Who's getting the advantage here? Sometimes I've seen it. The guy who has the extra weight, he didn't have to kill himself. He's bigger. He gets an advantage. But sometimes, no. Sometimes it's an indicator that he wasn't in the best of shape too. That's why he didn't come in.
Yep.
So he's not as prepared. So the guy who's lighter, even if it's by 4.5, 5 pounds, kind of like last night, is the guy that has the edge because he's more prepared. And he was disciplined enough. It tells you something. It's a little bit of a roadmap. It's a little bit of a scouting report in a way that it's telling you your opponent didn't have the discipline you had.
Yep.
So it's a very interesting thing. You brought it up, but there's a lot of ways to look at it. But getting back to the fight, I noticed Kattar switches. He switches from orthodox to southpaw. Again, one of the better strikers I've seen. Reminded me a little bit, not to that level, but Crawford. You know, how Crawford switches lefty-righty, very effectively, by the way. Tremendous. So I made a note to myself as I watched the fights. I want to be prepared to handle you and, of course, to satisfy the audience, my commitment to the audience. So I saw his boxing skills. I saw that he put combos together. And then something that wasn't mentioned. And again, consistent with what I talk about in boxing. It's not just about the power. It's about the delivery system. It's about the technique. It's about the trick. It's about the cleverness. It's about the mind. It's about the intellect. That how you deliver it. You can have the greatest power in the world. But if you don't have the system to deliver, like Mike Tyson, unbelievable puncher, either hand. But when he made you miss, bang, he caught you. He had a way to connect the power to the person's anatomy that it had to be connected. That's a nice way of putting it. To be able to destroy the guy. And it's the same thing. You can have all the power in the world. And unless you have a delivery system, a way of delivering it, the power doesn't mean as much. Kind of like Marciano. He had that heavyweight champ, only undefeated heavyweight champ to retire undefeated, 49-0. He had great power in either hand, but he had a trick that a lot of people aren't aware of to deliver it, and he used that trick in the 13th round in his first title fight against the great Jersey Joe Walcott. When he was behind on all cards, he was going to lose 15-round fight if he didn't knock him out, and he pulled on that trick. He landed the right hand, but the way he set it up, Ken, he started the left, and that was just enough to bring Walcott's eyes there. Boom! And then he threw the right hand. He landed. So I noticed that, again, I'm going to notice those things. I'm looking for them. And nobody talked about it, really. And they do a great job, those commentators. They do. They do. Not all the commentators in any sport do a great job. Boxing, any of them. But for the most part, I noticed these UFC guys, they got it pretty good. And they really do. But the reason he landed that elbow, not a punch, was he blinded him. He actually opened his left hand, Ken. He went like this. Opened it. But it was something you could do in UFC because of the glove type. You can't do that with a boxing glove. He opened his hand. I'm going to move over here to show you. Move your head. I don't want to hit you. All right? Yeah, thank you. Because I got to finish this show. I don't want to finish it alone. And he went out here like this. Boom! Well, actually, bam! He hit him with the elbow. But he blinded him. He set it up. And Rob's got it because that's what Rob does. He's got it all queued up here. And you're going to see it right now, all the fans. See? Blinded him with the left and then hits him with the elbow. Oh, boy. Thanks, Rob, for having that. I mean, that's it right there. That's it right there. Beautiful. Beautiful illustration. And that's why he was able to have I know it's the elbow hitting the guy, but the reason why he was able to get the punch in there so clean and where the guy had no chance of recovering from it was because he blinded him. The guy didn't even have time to register, get ready for something big.
Yeah. Did you notice he also, when he threw that elbow, Stevens hit him with a bomb, a perfect right hand, and looked like it broke his nose. In the interviews afterwards, if you notice, there was no marks on his face until that exchange that ended the fight. As he hit him with the elbow, he walked right through a right bomb to his nose. Just his nose started gushing.
He blinds him. Yeah, he gets hit with the right hand around the eye. That caused a cut. But as you said, as the commentators like to say, and I love it, he ate that right hand. He ate that right hand. Because that's what these guys do. They eat punches when they have to eat punches. It reminds me, and I know Rob's going to get this up for me. It reminds me of that great scene with Jack Nicholson in that movie with Tom Cruise. What was the name of that movie?
Oh, A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men. You know, you need me on that wall. You want me on that wall because while you're in your cocktail parties, talking and eating your little hors d'oeuvres and having your little drinks, and you're talking to your friends, and we're doing things that you don't talk about in such places, but things that you don't want to hear about, things you don't want to know that we do, but you need us there. While you're in there with your nice uniforms on and having nice little hors d'oeuvres and dinners. I'm reinventing the script a little bit. But you don't want to know what we have to do. But it's because of us. You need us. You want us there on that wall. Anyway, Jack Nicholson will give it better than I just gave it. A little bit more accurate. But the point is there. And again, it came down to, I always see the parallels. I mean, they're there if you're looking. You know, everybody could say, oh, wow, he hit him with that elbow. Yeah, he did. But he was calm enough, thoughtful enough, smart enough to blind him with this in order to do it. So again, it comes down to what? Intellect, technique. You know, being more than a caveman. Really. Because we see cavemen. A lot of people, they see these guys, they don't give them their dues. To the part that I opened the show with. How they developed this to become those guys. That doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
What it takes to become that. But then also that they're not just, you know, swinging a club. They're thinking. They're thinking. And the ones who think clearer, better, they're winning for the most part. They're separating themselves. Conor McGregor. I'll jump down that road real quick. Conor McGregor, when he was being built up, knocking all those animals out. And I say animals in a very, I don't have to tell anyone, I don't think, in a very respectful, revering way. These savages, like my son says about these football players that he loves. When he has one he loves, he says, Dad, the guy's a savage. I just, you know, just to hear it, I'm like, yeah, wow. Tell me about him. Tell me about this savage. You know, like I can't wait to hear. You know, and McGregor was knocking out these animals, these savages, but on his way up to get to the big money, to the Mayweather. You know, he earned it. He had to make you believe that he could do it. Even if it was a lot of promotion and a lot of sales and all. Everything's that. But he still had to pay his dues to get there. That's what I respect. And when he was doing it, he was knocking these guys out in one round, these guys that were top guys. But he was doing it. Yeah, he was a good striker. Yeah, he was a good puncher. Yeah, he was a southpaw. I get it. But also, he was smart. He knew what the freak he was doing. He had a plan that was better than theirs, and he executed it. You know, I remember the one guy, I can't remember the guy, but Rob will come up where he knocked the guy out. Tremendous. But he goes there and knocks him out in one round.
Jose Aldo?
Yeah. He knew he could get the guy to lead. He knew he could get the guy to reach in. So he acted like this animal that's just going to walk in, and he didn't. He let the guy believe he was, and then he let the guy throw the first punch where he left himself available. Bang! And he counted him. He got the guy to reach in, and then he counted the guy. Rob will probably get it up there. But, I mean, beautiful. Again, tough, brutal. Yeah. The result, you know, a lot of people say, Teddy, you call that beautiful? Yeah, and I don't like opera, by the way. Yeah, and I'm only kidding, of course. But yeah, and I didn't think that last opera set was so good either. that you and your friends were sitting in the balcony, you know, with those little glasses, you know. Yeah, I didn't think that was so cute. I'm just getting them back a little bit. But people have that attitude. People say, "Oh, you're sport." That drives me crazy, Ken. But I'm at a better place now. I'm at a better place. But those people would be at an event, a nice event. Someone would go, "I understand. Somebody was telling me, are you the guy that's in the boxing business?" I'm like, yeah, why?
Is that at one of the events Rob brought you to?
No. Yeah, why? Oh, how do you do it? How can you be in that business where people are they're hitting each other? How can you isn't that savage? No, it's not. It's very intellectual. It's very intellectual, very well thought out, very well planned, very well trained. It takes years of training to be calm enough to be a savage at that level. Could you pass one of those chopped liver
Great
pâtés, over there, please? Pass the Great Poupon. Please, we're going to get them as a sponsor. Rob's going to get them as a sponsor now. But
listen.
God.
Congratulations to Bostonian Calvin.
Oh, you had to put that in there. I caught you the beginning. You had to do it again. I caught it at the
I want
beginning.
everyone to know.
All right.
Well, next up was the two big heavyweights, Francis Ngannou against Rozenstruik from Suriname. This was the kid Rozenstruik was a super established kickboxer. I was looking at his stats, 76-8 with 64 knockouts as a professional kickboxer.
You would have thought he'd have the advantage. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes.
And you're that astute and on top of it. But go ahead. You would have thought he'd have the advantage. Go ahead.
Yep, especially against Ngannou, who's known to be a little bit weak on the ground. His strength is his stand-up. So Rozenstruik in his last fight was, probably losing to Alistair Overeem, who's been around for years, but big, tough dude. And Rozenstruik hit him with a punch, and it was, with a few exceptions, one of the worst injuries I've ever seen. I mean, he split his lip so bad, his lip was like hanging off in 3 pieces. I mean, it was so graphic. And after the fight, he said, "Hey, Ngannou, let's do this." And I'm thinking, these two are both good stand-up guys. This should be a battle. And it didn't last very long. 20 seconds of like gunslinging, and when the guys are that big and that strong, you don't have to get hit with many punches to turn the lights off, and Ngannou got him out of there in a hurry. Again, very respectful. He's a nice guy, Cameroonian, and was very respectful after the fight, but man, he put an end to that discussion very quickly. What'd you see?
Punches are born, not made. That's what I saw. I saw Deontay Wilder. I saw Deontay Wilder's more developed in certain areas. He's been doing it longer, but he did start late in his career too, even though he went to the Olympics, but he didn't start boxing until shortly before the Olympics. But he had that great natural ability to produce power with punches, and that's born. That's not made. And this guy's green, he's green around the ears, he's definitely, he's got a great story. I mean, you could go into it a little bit, but he's just got a great story of where he came from and where he started and how he built his physical strength. Oh, I mean, you got to root for a guy like that, and I'm glad you said what you say. He comes across as a genuine kid. A kid you want to root for before you hear the story. And then when you hear the story, I mean, you want to root even more. And but I say the same thing I said about Wilder, and it's a knock, but it's a knock with an explanation. With it's a knock from somebody in the business that is just pointing things out, not just trying to knock. Because I started it by saying all these flattering things, and this is not unflattering to me. It's just a fact that he is green, and he doesn't. When I say he reminds me of Deontay Wilder, I mean in a way that he has power. He's got that great eraser. And in a way that he don't know how to fight. In a way that his technique stinks, sometimes. and where he's throwing punches and he's reaching in and he's falling all over the place. But when he lands, just like Wilder does that too. Boy, oh boy, it's impactful, it's powerful, it's catastrophic for the other guy. But the other guy made it easy for him too, quite frankly. And again, if you don't want the truth, then go somewhere else. I mean, go. Because, you want to be in love with the guy. I'm in love with the guy too, with the story and everything about him. But I'm going to point out the warts. I'm going to point out, the facts. What was that show, Dragnet? Do you remember that show? You're too young. Dragnet, the detectives, where the very stoic detective. It was really good. Two of them. And they're detectives. And they come in there, they start getting a story from the person that that just has something happen, by the perpetrator, right? The victim. And they start telling them, and a very stoic detective says, only the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, ma'am. And that's kind of, I just want to say, just the facts, baby. Rozenstruik helped him. He pulled straight back. You don't pull straight back. When you do it, there's a chance you're going to pay the ultimate price. You're going to get hit and you're going to get hurt. And again,
when you posted that tweet, someone responded and say, if you're not supposed to pull back, what should you do?
Move your head! You think the guy heard me?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. Move your head, wise guy. I mean,
I think the guy was being sincere. Like, if he's not pulling back, should he?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Like, weave,
I'm sorry.
step around.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, he's just trying to learn. I'm sorry. You're getting
sorry.
me riled up here, and because I know there's people out there.
I should have given
have
context. That's my fault.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, but I'm sorry. I shouldn't react that way, especially after I'm talking about those past the great pool pond. I got to be more better etiquette than that. But so I'm sorry. But yes, you, sir, you move your head. It's like, if you've listened to me on ESPN over the years, it's like you're on a railroad track and there's a train coming. You don't run back on a train because the train's going to get you. You get off the track. You move your head. Okay? And that's what you do. And then the guy goes right by you, and then you catch him. That's what you do. But you got to be calm. You got to know how to do it. You got to be trained. And you get excited, and you pull back, and that's what happens. Especially if the guy pursues you. Now, to the credit, even though he did it with bad technique, to the credit of Ngannou, he followed him. A lot of guys don't. That's his aggressive, mentality, that I'm going to go after the guy. And he went after the guy, and he caught him at the end. He missed for a while, and then part of what I'm talking about. And then he caught him. So he broke one of the cardinal rules, one of the things you don't break. Go straight back in front of a guy. And he got caught. And, like I talk about the analogy of the train. He got hit by the train.
He was out cold.
He got hit by a locomotive. I mean, whoa.
Yep.
So, and to the guy out there, I'm sorry for yelling at you. If you do have somebody throw punches at you, move your head. Don't get hit by the locomotive.
Well, to your point about Ngannou's backstory, for those who don't know, he's from Cameroon. His parents divorced at a young age. When he was like 12, he went to live with his aunt, was working in literally a sand quarry, like with a shovel. At 22, he moved to Paris, in and out of homeless shelters, and he went there to become a professional fighter. And one of the motivating factors for him is he was a huge fan of Mike Tyson, who coincidentally was in the news last week. I'm sure you've probably seen the video clip of him throwing punches on with a trainer in front of him. And I was curious to get your take of what you thought about Mike's technique. I think that people are overreacting a little bit. Now, to Mike's credit, Mike Tyson hasn't said he's coming out of retirement. It looks like he's just getting in shape, and he looks good and he looks fast. But as you probably will point out, it's easy to look good when someone's not punching back. And, last time we saw him in there with Kevin McBride, it didn't look like he was hitting mitts. But curious to see if curious to hear your thoughts on the video you saw and his comparison, any comparisons to Ngannou.
First of all, people overreacted a little bit. A little bit. Again, I'll use a movie comparison. I know the people love these movie comparisons, right? I hope they do. We do. De Niro in Goodfellas, when with Pesci, when the guy had a problem with Pesci in a bar, and he said, "I didn't insult him." He said, "You insulted him a little bit. You insulted him a little bit. Overreacted a little bit, Ken. A little bit."
Yeah.
But let's look at the tape right now, okay? Let's go to the videotape. Who used to say that? One of the great broadcasters of all time, sports broadcaster, came from Washington.
Warner Wolf.
There it is, baby. Mr. Warner Wolf, this one's for you. Let's watch. Let's go to the videotape now. Okay? Looks a little, all right. He's losing weight. He's a little heavy in the caboose, right? A little bit. It's okay, though. Nobody's bringing that out. Digs into the body, moved his head. That was one of his signature things. He moved his head, make you miss, create an opening like I was talking about before. Decent speed. Speed is still there. Throwing with bad intentions, putting his body into it, right? Swiveling into it, right? Putting his back into it, getting every ounce of himself into it, not just hitting the surface, going through the surface, right? Doing all that stuff. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. You see anybody throw back at him, Ken?
Nope.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the pad came at him. He went under that, but pads usually don't hurt you, too much. But yeah, that's a nice thing. If he fights for charity, you know what? I'll be the first guy to say, "Hey, thank you for doing that." I will. I'll be the first guy to do that. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with that? That's fine. I think maybe it's more on the trainer's part that he was kind of, what's the word, juicing it up a little bit. He was stoking it up a little.
Yeah.
I think it was more from him. Maybe he's looking for, I don't know. I don't know the guy, but maybe he's looking for some kind of comeback where if he does do more than hit the, how much can he get paid for holding the pads? What's the going price for that, right? But maybe if he actually, right? I don't know. But maybe if he actually comes back and fights, maybe, and he stokes it up and he fights, maybe there's a little more money in it for him. Look, there I am having cynical thoughts. Where do those come from? Where do they come from? Oh my God. But look, he looked the way he's always going to look. He's that kind of athlete. He's that kind of, even X amount of years later, at whatever age he's at, he's that kind of, he's got that kind of DNA. It's like riding a bike to him. It's obviously it's muscle memory. He knows how to do these things. He started doing them with us when he was 12.
He's 53 now, almost 54.
He was one of the best at it. So doing it in that kind of atmosphere with no stress, just doing an athletic move. Let me put it the way that I think is fair to put it. It would be like the great Henry Aaron, right? The great Henry Aaron, at the age that he's at, I think he's 86 years old. But even, let's go back. Let's say Henry Aaron at 76. Let's go back. Let's say Henry Aaron at 66. Whatever. You get the point. It's like him in a batting cage and somebody took a video and he's hitting the ball out in a batting cage. Oh! I don't think anybody's gonna go saying, "Oh, I want to see him against Verlander." I don't think anybody's gonna be going on this thing called the internet, right, Ken, and putting stuff out there, which they put stuff out there. These nice people, right? These nice people. Maybe they get a little carried away with themselves, Ken. A little bit, maybe. Just a little bit. They get a little emotional, right? They get a little crazy. We all get a little crazy. Would they get crazy if the great Hank Aaron went into a batting cage at 86, 76, 66, and he was hitting home runs in a batting cage? Would they say, if he wants next month, he can come back. He can come back against the Tigers. and Verlander's in a lot of trouble. Strasburg. Strasburg, you better get out of town, Strasburg. You better not pitch that day. I mean, Ken, help me here. Help these people. Ken, help these people. Really. Come on, talk to them. I mean, really. He's going to come back. He's going to be... I mean, again, I'll use another analogy. Michael Jordan, all right? The greatest. And he's a good one because he's out there now with the documentary, right? The Last Dance, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's watching it. And...
Yeah.
So arguably the greatest. I think he was the greatest. That's subjective. Okay. But one of the greatest of all time. How old is he? He's probably around Tyson's age. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Roughly,
it's a good one. Here's a good one. Okay. Somebody takes a videotape of him in a gym hitting 15 straight 3-pointers. Right? Right? I'm sure he could do that with his eyes closed. He hit 15 straight. See the follow through, Ken?
Excellent technique.
Yeah, 15 straight 3-pointers. There's nobody on that internet saying, LeBron, look out. Look out, Greek freak. Look out. What's his name? The Greek freak. He's a
Giannis. Gunton Kupu. Something like
Giannis,
that.
You know what? You better be sick that day. You better be sick. You better forget to bring your sneakers to work that day so you don't have to get on that court and get embarrassed by MJ. Okay? All right. Now, you know what? I gave you enough. I gave you enough to drive people crazy for my man, our man Rob, to put stuff up there where everybody is going to like get their freaking best teeth out and just like ready to rip my jugular out of my neck. Good. Go ahead. Come on. Come on.
Well, by the way, Ngannou in his last 4 fights, including last night, he has 4 wins and he's fought a total of 2 minutes and 42 seconds in the octagon. He's just like blasting people out of there.
Listen, is it he's in with the right guys, or the whatever maybe, but it's a combination of his natural power, and guys make mistakes, and when you make a mistake with a guy who can punch like that, just like Deontay Wilder, you're gonna pay a price. And I'll finish my breakdown of this fight. I said a lot of good things, and most importantly, things that needed to be said from an analytical standpoint. Sooner or later, as great a story as this guy is, if he doesn't improve in those technical areas, it'll come to an end, just like it came to an end for Wilder. It does. It's just the law of physics. It's the law of gravity. What goes up has to come down. I mean, sooner or later, Ken, you could take that to the bank. That it doesn't make me any smarter than the next guy, but I know this business. And in any business, you're making those kind of serious mistakes. You might be having that great eraser, and it erases a lot of mistakes, that power. And it does. It does. It takes care of a lot of sins. But sooner or later, if you don't correct those things, you will pay a price. It will end, just like it did for Wilder. Sooner or later, if you're around long enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be curious to see what happens there. He's supposed to be in line for a title shot, but the heavyweight division's a mess there. They got the champion is Stipe Miocic, who's a full-time firefighter in, I think, Cleveland, and didn't want to come. I don't think he wanted to get involved with the whole COVID situation. Don't quote me on that in case I'm wrong. I don't want to get it savaged on the internet, but anyway, I'd be curious to see. I think he's next. They're trying to make Cormier, Miocic, and maybe Ngannou will get the winner. Be interesting to see. But co-main event, Henry Cejudo, Olympic champion, 2-weight division champion, fighting Dominick Cruz.
Now, when you say Olympic champion, just qualify it. You mean a gold medalist in wrestling?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Gold medalist in Olympic wrestling. Fighting Dominick Cruz, former champion. Dominick's been dealing with a ton of injuries over the years. He's been in and out of the ring for long stretches. One of the questions coming into the fight was about ring rust. Is it real? And before we get into the fight itself, I'd love to hear your thoughts on ring rust. Do you think it's real? Do you think that guys need a tune-up fight? Does it take a little while to get that instinct back, regardless of how much sparring you've done? What are your thoughts?
I think it's real. I mean, I think it's tangible. I think... Because
Cruz has said he thinks it's all mental. He doesn't believe that ring rust is a real thing.
Listen, I'm the guy that's a great believer in the strength of, the mind. I mean, I'm always going to be on that side of arguments. If a guy believes something strong enough, he makes it real. If you can believe something into reality, you can. And if he believes, that I'll make a little bit of a comparison. Some of the people will get a kick out of this. But one of the taboos in my sport, in boxing, going way back, is that you shouldn't have sex before a fight, that a fighter, it will drain their legs, it will weaken their legs. And a lot of people believe that it would physically weaken your legs. And Cuss, when I was a young trainer with Cuss, he made sure he talked to me about that. And he said, look, you want your fighters doing the right thing, and you don't want them gallivanting around before fight and all that stuff. That's the main thing. You want them to live by a certain code of conduct and discipline and sacrifice, because it's the right way to prepare for something. It is. But that's all hogwash with that. That's, that's just like an old wives' tale, whatever you want to call it. He said there's no physical facts behind it. He said, but if people believe, he said, think about it. The act of having sex, what it's gonna do to you physically. He said, what's it gonna do? That's gonna weaken you. That's gonna leave you without physical stamina to go in the ring. He said, are you kidding me? Then you better not walk up steps before the fight. He got right to the point. And so he took away the myth from it, the BS from it, and made you look at what you were agreeing to, what you were believing in, or being sold. And so, it's like selling somebody, property. This is great riverfront property. It looks a little swampy to me. I mean, looks a lot of mosquitoes over there, and those seems to be lily pads. I mean, you sure this is riverfront prime property? Oh, I'm not sure. So, he made the point to me that he had these two fighters, Jimmy Arness and Mike Bulick. If their family's still alive, I hope they're fans of this show. And you never know. All of a sudden you get a guy writing in. But, and I always try to give proper dues and the proper respect to these guys that weren't known, but yet they were terrific fighters and they plied their trade and everything else. But you don't know about them because they weren't champions or big name, whatever. But anyway, he had these two guys, and they were both... They broke all the rules in the world when it came to this stuff, Ken. Everything. He said, "Oh my God." Yeah. He said they broke all the rules. He said they never, ever, ever got tired. They never got tired. They were like the Energizer bunny. you know? And they were like the bunny in other ways too, without, obviously. And they never stopped throwing punches. He said these guys were like Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill, or Henry Armstrong, hammering Hank. I mean, they never stopped. They never freaking tired. And you know what else they were? They were deaf mutes. They couldn't hear anything. So Cuz attributed it to they couldn't hear the BS. They couldn't hear all the crap that you're supposed to get tired. So they didn't get tired because it didn't mentally affect them. Because otherwise, when things get tough and you're in life, you look for excuses. And all of a sudden, that's a handy excuse. Gee, I had sex with that girl the other day, and it's a tough fight. And there's no getting around it. It is a tough fight, and you got to push through it. All of a sudden, that becomes an excuse. It's just like people in other things in life. It becomes an excuse. Oh, I didn't do this, and it's got nothing to do with it. Maybe you shouldn't have done it. It's got nothing to do with it, but you're using it for an excuse.
Yeah.
And it was a great story to me, that these guys never got tired. They broke all the rules, but they couldn't hear. They couldn't hear it, so it didn't affect them. It didn't creep in like the ninjas over the wall that creep in the middle of the night when you're not looking, to attack you, to undermine you. And so you could have the same thing here. That I think the rust has more tangible effect on you. Because if you're away for 3 years, I think he was away over 3 years. If you're away that long, there's a tangible effect. There's something tangible that you're not in a ring. You still could be training and you could be doing everything in the gym, but you're not actually. It's kind of like what they talk about the speed of the game. When they talk about an NFL player coming back. Yeah, he's been training. He's been off for a while, but it's going to take him a while to get used to the speed of the game. And it's true. It's usually true. Or a basketball player. It's going to take a while to get ready to the speed of the game. Again, even though he's been doing everything, in practice, he's been doing everything, but it's nothing like the actual event. And so I think there's something tangible that happens. The erosion of timing. But I do think there's a mental component to it too. The erosion mentally, the erosion of timing, the erosion of your reflexes being put to the test and up to the test. I think that's all part of it, Ken, and that's real. But I also think it's real that the erosion is mental, that you believe it's going to affect you. And if you believe it's going to affect you, you make it happen. It affects you. When something's going tough, normally you'd throw it to the side. It's part of the game. I just got to get through it. It's part of the deal. But now it's not part of the deal. Now it's because of that. And you start giving in. That's what happens in life. And if this guy is the kind of guy that's mentally at that level where he's beyond that, it doesn't impact him. He doesn't let it impact him. Again, like that line in The Godfather. What a movie. I salute Don Corleone. I salute Don Corleone. With all those politicians in your pocket like so many nickels and dimes. I salute. If $1 million of seed money is nothing. I salute. So, or 10 million, whatever it was. So, hey, more power to him. There's guys like that. And if he's one of those guys, so I'm not going to blame the final result on what happened because of his being off. He's not blaming it. He's a real fighter. He's not blaming it. So, but it could have had an effect. It could have had an effect. But you know what and it maybe was part of this. But what really had an effect in that fight was, again, the fight plan. Sticking to it, the discipline, recognizing what you're in there with, recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent, knowing what you're preparing for. Cejudo, he recognized that he had a guy that was going to move. And like the similarities, the parallels I talk about in my sport, in boxing, they were there again. They were there again. Because if you know that you got a guy who's going to move and you're going into a fight, you go to the body. You plan on it. You cut the ring down. You take space away. But you go to the body. Why? So you can take his legs away late in the fight. Slow him down. But in this tough sport, right? My sport's tough too. This sport's really, really tough. In this sport, you take a guy's legs away by really literally taking him away. You kick the crap out of him. You bust him up. And to the credit of Cejudo, he understood that. And what did he do? He started taking his legs away early. Banging his legs with his feet. And so he understood what he needed to do better than the other guy understood my point. Because Cruz was taller and longer. For me, the other guy was shorter, Cejudo. For me, his plan, Cejudo understood what he had to do. He had to take his legs away to slow him down. The other guy, Cruz, should have understood, hey, I'm longer, I'm taller. You know what I got to do? This little guy's got to come to me to get me. I don't have to come to him. So that's what I do. It's what I don't do. I don't freaking come to him. When he comes to me, bang, bang, I time him. I don't come to him. I let him come to me. I don't give him my legs. I try to keep my legs out of play. But when he comes to me, I make him come to me, and I time him coming to me. But I don't make his job easy by coming to him, because now he doesn't have to take risks to get to me. You should make the smaller guy go to a bad neighborhood and get mugged. Make him take risk. Make him come to you to get to you because you're taller, right? But he didn't have to take that risk because Cruz did his job for him. He went to him. And ultimately, in the end, and again, it wasn't really mentioned a lot. We haven't talked about because the main thing is he understood the plan. He was taking his legs away. He was disciplined. The commentators did make the point that his technique was better. All the right things. But for me, when I'm watching it, what I saw was consistent throughout the whole night, what I was looking for, and that's the way it ended. Where at the end, when he got caught with that knee, when Cruz got caught with that knee, and then he argued that the fight was stopped a little too soon, right? But when he got caught, forget about the argument. Forget about all that. I thought he was hurt. I thought the referee made the right call. But again, you could argue it either way. Fine. I'm not taking that away from Cruz. All I'm saying is you put yourself in that position because the taller, longer guy, you reached in. You reached in. And when you reached in to get to the shorter guy, which you should not be doing, that's when he countered you with a knee and caught you with the knee and put you in that position. So you were not consistent with understanding your game plan, understanding your physical advantages in that match and using them. The other guy did. The other guy understood what he needed to do better than you understood what you needed to do. You should not be reaching in with a short guy because you make yourself available to a counter. And he was available to a counter knee.
Yep. Well, one of the interesting things that happened after the fight, I agree with you. I thought the stoppage was good too, although right as the ref jumped in, Cruz was starting to try to get to his feet, but you can't take 10, 11 unanswered shots without making a move to defend yourself or get up. So anyway, that argument aside, Cruz came out after the fight and said that the referee smelled of cigarettes and booze during the fight in the ring prior to the start of the fight. I've never heard of that before, and I would find that seems a bit far-fetched. I mean, it's hard to say what's true and what's not, but I would have a hard time believing that the ref at the UFC is drinking and smoking before he gets in the ring, just with the amount of people around. Now, granted, they're doing the isolation thing there, but I just don't know how you slip away from people and smoking and drinking before a fight. I'll be curious to see how this plays itself out because I'm sure the ref's not going to be happy about that if it's not true.
Well, Dana White's not going to be happy because it starts to speak to the integrity of it was a good night. We started this by saying it was a good night. You don't want something bad.
Very good.
You don't want something bad, and that's bad. That's bad. You don't want something bad coming in. You don't want to start. There's a reason why Pete Rose, and a lot of people could argue, and I'll argue it too, but why he's still not in the Hall of Fame and why he's still not allowed in baseball. Because he bet on the game, something that directly impacted the integrity of the game, and they understood, the guys who rule that game, the guys who run that game, the guys who enforce that game, they administrate that game, they understood one thing, no matter what. You can have fights, you can have this, you can have whatever. You even have guys stealing signals, and they punish the Houston Astros or whatever.
Houston Astros, yeah.
Yeah, they punish them for stealing signals. You can survive all that, but you can't survive betting on the game. You can't compromise the game in that way. You can't. That speaks to the core of the integrity of the game. You can't do that. So that's why Pete Rose, a lot of people think he should still be in the Hall of Fame. But that's an argument for another day. But that's why he was booted out. And that's why it was so severe. Because he bet on the game. And this is something, again, that Dana White doesn't want to hear. I'm sure he's going to have to look into it. Because that's something you want to clear any talk of that out of the way. You want to remove any suggestion of that, because for the same reason why Pete Rose is not in baseball, because that, other than other things, all the other things you can survive that I just pointed out, but that you can't, because if any of that kind of chicanery is going on, you're going to lose the audience, because now they can't trust the game. They can't trust it to be pure. And it's the same thing here. Dana White, I'm sure, is going to have to look into this. And it sounds very far-fetched. I agree with you. But still, that's something that you can't tolerate, even for a hint of it to be out there. When you're running that organization the way Dana White runs the organization, and he does a good job. You can't have any of that thought of a hint of where the integrity of the game, where a referee could be tainted, where he could stop a fight. If he could be drunk, then he could do other things wrong. He could possibly be, if he's stupid enough, if the rules are lax enough to let a guy be drunk as a referee in the ring, then it could be lax enough where somebody could get to him and give him $10,000 to stop a fight that shouldn't be stopped.
Yeah.
So this is something, again, this is an accusation from this fighter that has to be looked at only because the seriousness of what it speaks upon, what it touches to. The integrity of the game, that a referee could be tainted, a referee could be influenced, whether it's by being drunk or any other way. So, and look, this is a proud fighter. This is a proud fighter. This is a guy that he went 10 years without a loss, Ken. This is not an ordinary guy. This is like Carlos Monzon in boxing, who went 13 years, the great middleweight champ, one of the greatest fighters of all time, without a loss. He went 10 years, a decade, oh my goodness, without a loss. So this is a proud, special guy, and he was hurt. The mentality of a fighter, he's hurt that the fight stopped. He's never been stopped before. It hurts his pride. What really matters. It's not the money that he ain't going to make or whatever, going back to the back of the line and work your way. It's not that. You know that with a guy like this. It's just that he's so proud that he probably can, part of what makes him so good that he could win for 10 straight years without losing is his ego, his belief that you can't beat me. And that was taken away by a referee's decision. And he probably, even though I think it was the right decision, he probably can't see that. And I can't blame him, because he wouldn't be who he is if he could see it. He wouldn't be who he is.
But to make that accusation, you got to believe that he either really thinks that or that it was true, because I just can't see a guy with that kind of reputation making such an outrageous accusation.
I don't know if he really thinks it. I just think along the lines of what I was saying, that's my feeling, is that he just can't, his ego can't buy the fact that he couldn't get up. Because in his mind, he could get up. And he's probably right. He could get up. But that doesn't mean that the referee didn't do the right thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't, because the referee's looking at how affected he is, how impacted he was from the punches. He might be able to get up and then get hit and get really hurt. So, but in his mind, I could see him with his belief and with the wherewithal that he has, with the greatness inside himself that allowed him to go 10 years without losing, Ken, that he just can't accept that.
Yeah.
Anything but that. And I get it. But that doesn't mean he's right about the ref.
Yeah. Well, it was an impressive performance by Cejudo, who now, after the fight, announced his retirement, so will go out on top as the champ of 2 weight divisions and with his Olympic gold medal in wrestling. And that brings us to the main event: Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje, only 2 losses, by the way, one of them to a friend of the show, Dustin Poirier, and the other to Eddie Alvarez. I spoke with Dustin Poirier before this event, and he told me in the co-main and the main, he liked Cejudo and Gaethje, and Gaethje was almost 2-1 underdog, and I happen to agree with them. But for the record, Dustin said after the fight, I'll beat Gaethje again, just please let Teddy know. But this fight was all action, super entertaining, lived up to all the hype. Incredible performance by Justin Gaethje. I think he showed an incredible ability to get better and get smarter, because he was known as an all-action fighter, but he got hit a lot. And one of the things he said after the fight was that in going back and working with his trainer, he's basically trying to remedy the problems he was having with getting hit so much, and it looks like he's done it, because Ferguson is known as being a ferocious striker. And man, I loved this fight. Every minute of it was unbelievable. Both guys were damaged. Obviously, Ferguson a lot more than Gaethje, but what'd you think of this one?
Well, it shows you how special Poirier is, that he beat this guy. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, he'll be a champion again, Poirier. Yeah, I have no doubt about that. But having said that, that's my feeling, you know. Some haters out there might say something about that too. That's okay. It'll be a hell of a fight, though. Maybe that's what I should start by saying. I'd pay for that. Because of the styles.
Same.
Because of the styles. They're both terrific strikers. I like that. You know, Good punches, good strikers, always positioned, balanced. You know, in position to strike. You know, that's one of the compliments I give the great boxer Inoue. Inoue, the Japanese fighter who they call the monster, that's won the title so early, so few fights, and in so many divisions. You know, Ken. One of his greatest strengths is that he's always balanced. He's always set. He's always in position. He's never out of position when he throws a punch. But having said that, I will start by saying, boy, these guys are tough. I'll say it again. Boy, these guys are tough. I'll say it one more time. Boy, these guys are tough. But having said that, man, Ken, if you take a rock is pretty hard to hurt. If you take a rock, a big rock, a boulder maybe, and you crack it with a sledgehammer, it's extraordinary. It's a rock. It doesn't splinter. It doesn't crack. It doesn't break off. And you crack it, and you crack it, and you crack it, and nothing happens. Then you come back the next day, and you crack it, and you crack it with a sledgehammer, and nothing happens. And then one day you come back, and you just lean on it, and a piece falls off. Kind of like the jab at the end of the night, hurting this courageous warrior, And that's all I could call him. Just a samurai, a warrior, gladiator. You pick your choice. And obviously I'm talking about Ferguson. And at the end, he was gone. But it's because the Rock kept getting hit. Sooner or later, it's going to show. Even when it's not showing, it's having an impact. Something is loosening up. Something is happening. No man is a rock unto himself. In true terms. Philosophically, whatever way you want to, or physically. And that is what took place. But, again, the parallels, my sport, this sport. When I was commentating for all those years with ESPN, same thing. It's one thing to be tough. It's another thing, who's the smarter guy? And that was Gaethje. And I'm not taking nothing. I love Ferguson. How could you not love? I spent the whole beginning of this broadcast talking about men like him. So, of course, I love him. But I love Gaethje, too. That he's ready to die.
He said that after the fight. He said, I went in here ready to die.
And you know what? I don't usually believe guys when they say it. I believe these guys when they say it. That for that moment, they get themselves there. I believe them. How else could you perform that way? How else can you leave everything outside the door that you have to leave outside the door? Think about what I'm saying. You got to leave stuff outside the door, human stuff, to go in there ready to deal with what these guys deal with. You got to leave it outside the door. If you think about living, you won't be able to do it. I know that sound, people, Teddy, yeah, I'm going to tell you a story. Obviously, it's not as severe, but it gets to the point. Cus D'Amato, the greatest, for me, my mentor, psychologically, everything, technically, dedicated his whole life to the sport. We just did a podcast on him last week. So if people haven't seen it, if you feel like it, you can see it. And he, special man, understood this realm, and how it attached to this realm. This is the general, this is just the troops. And he told me he was getting ready to go in the army. He had been drafted, I guess, and he was getting ready to go in the army. So you know what his first thing that he did? He didn't write a letter. He didn't say goodbye to people. He didn't start doing all that. That could be your first thing. Or you could start packing. But first thing he did, he started sleeping on the floor. He stopped sleeping on a bed. Why? Because he said he had to stop being comfortable with the things that make us comfortable, that do not allow us to be ready to do certain things, like die. He said in his mind, I'm going in the army, especially back in those days. I'm going in. There's only one thing I got to be prepared to do: die. He said, he didn't want to die. He wasn't going to go run out into the field and say, shoot me. But he, in his mind, he was talking to his young trainer, who he wanted to be a good trainer. And he said, Teddy, that's how I prepared for it. So it's hard to die if you're living comfortably, because you don't want to lose those things. You're human. So I got rid of them one by one. I started getting rid of all the things that made it comfortable to live, that made me want to live, like a comfortable mattress. And I slept on the floor to condition myself. And I believe these guys do the same thing. I believe to get ready to go in that ring, they have to be ready in their mind, just like Cus was getting ready for the army, to die. Do they want to die? Of course not. But they have to have that mentality to perform at the level that we watch. And then I spent 20 minutes at the beginning of this podcast trying to give them not just the respect, for people to appreciate what they truly do and how they do it. They have to prepare themselves, and they have to give up comforts of things and thinking of things that would not allow them to be prepared to die. Having said that, it's still about controlling all your assets, your mind, your feelings, to be cold. See, if you're willing to die, you can be cold. If you're not willing to die, you're very emotional. Everything impacts you. Everything flirts with you. Everything moves you. Everything confuses you. Influences you in ways that you can't afford to be influenced. So you got to be cold, disciplined. Some people call it patient. I saw Gaethje patient. Wasn't an accident. I saw him cold. I saw him patient. I saw him controlled. I saw him understand something the other guy didn't understand. He understood how to behave like a fighter, no doubt. He always has, Ferguson. What a tough son of a bee. Again. But he didn't understand how to use his physical assets the best. He only depended on his toughness. Like I call the fights, I bring this out in ESPN. This guy, Gaethje, didn't depend only on his toughness.
Which is what he had a reputation for doing coming into the fight.
He depended on, he used other things. He drew from other things that were there to draw from. Like I said about Salvador Sanchez, when he beat my favorite fighter at the time, the featherweight champ, Danny Indian Red, Little Red Lopez. They called them both. But because Sanchez didn't rely only on his toughness. And Little Red, he relied mostly on his toughness. And sometimes it's not enough when the other guy's tough and using these other resources, these other abilities, these other assets. So I saw, like I see when I call fights, I saw Gaethje where he understood that Ferguson would give up his height. See, it's one thing I used to always say on ESPN corner fights. This guy's taller, this guy's longer. Everyone loves to put those stats out there, Ken. What do they mean? They mean crap. They mean squat if you don't know how to use them. Oh, this guy's got a reach that's 102 inches. Whoa. That means he could stand across the street and hit you. Wow. Wow. Yeah, he's got 100 and he's 7 inches taller. But do they ever bother to tell you if he knows how to use them? How to fight tall? What the freak good is it if you don't know how to freaking use it? And Ferguson just depends on his toughness. That's enough. He depends, and it's always worked for him. Breaking a guy down with pressure. I've always said on ESPN, pressure breaks pipes. It breaks people. Sometimes. But that's what he depends on. He was all in. All his eggs in that one basket. That's what he was going to be. He was taller, he was longer, but he don't know how to fight tall. And he doesn't pay attention to that. He's just going to break you freaking down. And the other guy, at this point in his career, and you brought up a good point, he was always known just for being tough. He's gotten wiser. He's gotten smarter. He's gotten to that place in life more desperate, whatever, more urgent, whatever you want to call it. But he got there. It's not enough just to be tough. I got to be the other things. So he went into this fight understanding this guy's is tall, no, means crap, because he's going to give up his height. He's going to come to me. That's predictability. I can take advantage of that predictability. I can count on that. When he comes in, I ain't going to him. I'm going to set. I'm going to be ready. And when he comes in, I'm going to time him. I'm going to counter the crap out of him. Yeah, he's a tough son of a gun. Yeah, he's a rock. But I'm going to keep hitting that rock all night until it starts to splinter, until it starts to flake. It starts to break off. And that's what he did. He was patient. He was together. He was smart. He was prepared. He was the best he could be because he wasn't just tough. He was everything. And what he did was, again, he let this Ferguson, who always comes at you like a bull, seeing red, and he came at him, and he didn't go and throw the first lead. He drew the counter. When the guy reached in, bang! When the guy come, bang! He timed him. He timed him all night, and he deserves credit for that. He deserves credit for that. Yeah, the other guy's still just as tough. Still, but he's the loser because he was only dependent only on that. And that's the parallels in life. That's the parallels in boxing and MMA, UFC. That's the parallels. It always comes down to that. When it doesn't, it's just because the guy didn't use it. But it still was there. And that's what I saw in that fight.
Did you happen to notice when Gaethje had the fight in hand, maybe between the second and third?
He made one mistake. He made one mistake. I'm going to jump on you. He made one mistake.
Yeah.
Gaethje, because with that kind of fight, there's not a lot of margin for error. And he made one mistake. He broke his own rule. He led with an uppercut. Maybe it's what you were about to talk about. I forget where it was. It was at some point at the end of the...
I think it was the end of the second.
He started to lead with a wide, fat... That's what I used to always call them. You know? I used to say he needs to go to the butcher shop and get the butcher to cut a little fat off that punch. Cut a little fat off it. He made one mistake, Ken. He started to, I think it was a right uppercut. He started to lead with a wide right uppercut, which he didn't do all night. And he got beat to the punch and he got hurt. But then he came back the next round. He picked up where he left off. He probably yelled at himself, probably smacked himself in the head, said, damn it, come on, stupid. All night you know what you got to do, and now you're going to make a mistake? No more mistakes. And for the rest of the night, he didn't make a mistake.
I was going to say, I think in between one of the late rounds, the trainer said to him, don't make that same mistake. Don't get out there and get reckless. You're doing perfect. Stay patient. Every time he got him hurt, he wasn't rushing in. He just let him do the crazy leg dance as he was wobbled and then just got back to being patient. And when the trainer said, you've been in this position before and made the mistakes, and then Gaethje just looks at him and said, yeah, I did that twice. And I got caught.
That's called being honest with yourself. That's called being prepared.
I was just curious if you saw that. I thought it was an interesting moment.
He had lost that way before. But that's why I mean, at this point in his career, wiser, older, more urgency, whatever the freak it was, being aware, being honest, looking yourself in the mirror, whatever you want to call it. But, yeah, he was aware of his mistakes that cost him, and this night they weren't going to cost him. They almost did, but they weren't going to cost him.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is about what do you think about Ferguson was in camp for, I don't know how long. It seems like a never-ending camp, maybe since January or something, because the fight with Khabib kept getting pushed back due to the COVID. So he's been in camp for a long time. And actually, on the date of the original fight, which I think was about 3 weeks ago, Ferguson actually made weight. And he's got a cut to get to there. And he just did it because he said that basically he needed to follow through for himself and just make weight. So he made weight 3 weeks ago. But again, that's what makes Ferguson so unique and so interesting. What are your thoughts on this, the length of the camp and doing things to yourself like making weight 3 weeks out? It's got to take a toll, I would imagine.
It shows why my son is a good scout for the Oakland Raiders. He texts me during the fight and says, Dad, you think cutting that weight is costing him a price right now? That's what he said to me, my son. And I think it's possible. I think it's possible. Sometimes people, they're trapped by who they are. And who they are is great, and it's enough. Ferguson, who he is, what he's been, one of the most exciting, special fighters in MMA. I mean, special son of a B. What a special, and with love, I'm saying that in a most respectful way. But, I mean, just a special guy. But sometimes you could get trapped. It works. But you could get trapped into being that guy where you can't adapt. Where, you're going to live or die with that. And you could get to a situation where somebody could say to you, and it happens in life, again, where somebody could say, Ken, listen, we're not questioning who you are. You shouldn't question who you are. But this time, let's make a little adaptation. You're only 3 weeks before the fight. If you cut the weight now, it could weaken you a little bit. No, I'm not. Call it what you want. Stubborn. Call it being a caveman. Call it being regimented. Call it being rugged. Because he's rugged. They all are. Whatever you want to call it. Call it whatever the freak you want. Call it something. Call it something. Pay attention to it. Because it's just like when a guy gets to a certain point, an athlete who's been so successful, and it's time to change a little or walk away or whatever. Those times come. His ego doesn't allow it. And people say, oh, gee, look, his ego. Well, his ego made him. Without that power of that ego, he wouldn't have got to there.
That's a good point.
So maybe his ego destroyed him too. But his ego made him. You gotta be it's hard to be in these men's shoes. But you gotta give it a second of thought. That's what made him. That's his mentality. That, I'm going to tell you another crazy story about Cuss. Cuss, one time, he used to make breakfast for me sometimes, but Cuss liked to eat. If you watch the podcast, you're going to find out that we did last week. But he loved to eat. Ken, it was one of those things. He's Italian. He came from a poor family. There wasn't always enough money, but they always found a way to have enough food. Proud people, just like we have today in all walks of life and society. And it stayed with him. You didn't waste anything either. So he would make eggs for me in the morning. He said, Teddy, what do you want? 6, 7? What do I got, a crew with me here? I thought I came in alone into the kitchen. What? 6, 7, 8? What? But that was Cuss. I said, no, 2, 3. 2? What are you going to do with 2? That wouldn't fill the cavity in my tooth. All right, Cuss, listen. Give me, how about you give me 2 and a slice of bacon? I don't know. It's like I got to make a deal to get breakfast over here. Like, I can't just say I want 2. So one day he's making his eggs, 7, 8, 9, whatever it was. And he loved hot pepper, Italian, again. I don't know. That's part, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. And so he's putting a hot pepper. Somehow the lid, it happens, right, Ken? The lid wasn't tight. I didn't do it. Ken, don't even dare to think that.
That's what I was just about to say. Ken, I know you did it.
How could you think that? Come on. So the cap's loose. He goes to sprinkle the red hot pepper, and it all falls in. The cap comes off, and it all falls in the eggs. Right? It's rough. Like my son would say, that's rough. That's rough. Sometimes at the tailgates, we go to the tailgates before the Jets game. I bought season tickets to the Jets because you couldn't get them for the Giants back then. And I wanted to have season tickets so me and my son, when he was a little boy, we could be together for all the games. And so I bought season tickets from the Jets, and we'd go to the games. And part of it, a friend of mine ran a tailgate, and the tailgate was a man's tailgate. You know what I'm saying, Ken? It wasn't like,
yes, I do.
You were soft a little bit and your stomach, don't come. You had a weak stomach, don't come. I shouldn't even get into some of it. And God bless the guy. The guy was one of my best friends. I love the guy. Loved him to death.
At the Jets parking lot, they would go through there. If your tailgate wasn't man enough, they'd probably just take you and throw you out of the parking lot. Jets tailgating is not for the faint of heart. Jets in Buffalo, if you don't bring your A game, they might just scare you right out of the parking lot.
I'm speaking to a man that understands. I'm speaking to the right man. So, things, my son was like 8 years old, 7, 8, growing up. And he's watching, he's watching this, And the guy, great guy, great man. But rough. It's a man's tailgate. And so he had nice steaks. And he went to a good butcher. It's not like we were eating anything that wasn't good. It's what happened to the food before it got to your mouth. But the food, the steaks were prime. So he decided he's got his own little recipe, and he's proud. He's proud of his tailgates. So he puts Peter Luger's steak sauce. You had Peter Luger's steak sauce, Ken?
Of course, my favorite, actually.
All right, it's great. So he would put his little touch. He would put it on it. Right? And then he would let it cook into the steak. It was nice. One little problem. He didn't have one of those brushes to put it on with. So he used his hand. So he would wipe it on, all these steaks, these beautiful steaks. There's 30 men waiting for their steaks, 30. And they're waiting for their steaks. And he's got the barbecue. He's got, he had to do a couple rounds because the barbecue could only fit maybe, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he's got to say, and he's rubbing it on with the hand, And then he's got to get to the next batch. Well, we might as well go all the way with this, right, Ken? He didn't allow napkins. He didn't think it was something that should be allowed in his tailgate. So,
no.
Yeah, he licked his hand clean. You got to have a clean hand for the next batch. You can't have Peter Luger.
I know who this guy is.
We're not putting out any names here. And
it's Rob Moore.
No, it's not. So, he cleans his hand and he goes on to the next batch. He's a guy that I love. He goes on to most people, to tell you where we are and the kind of crowd we're in, most people, they're not even moving. They're not phased. But a few of them, the newcomers that had never been here, the newcomers, and maybe an 8-year-old, they're looking and they're like, kind of like you need Alka-Seltzer already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're looking like, what the? And all of a sudden he notices, because he's great. He's aware of the crowd. He's aware of everything. So he notices, he looks, he goes, wah. What's the matter? Problem? And, he's got still dripping a little bit, a little bit. He goes, don't worry. And I always careful how I talk on this show. But for this one, I'm going to say it's not that bad. But if you have kids, tell them to leave just for a minute. Just for a minute. He goes, what? I wipe my ass with my right hand.
That's comforting.
I knew you'd appreciate that. I knew you'd appreciate that, Ken. And so getting back to cuss.
That's a good one.
Getting back to cuss. he dumps the whole thing, the whole red pepper, into this 6, 7, 8, 9 eggs, whatever he was having. But he lives by a code, like I'm talking about with Ferguson. He lives by a code that you make a mistake, especially with food, the way he was brought up, you pay for that mistake. You pay for that. You don't throw the eggs in the garbage and put 8 new eggs in. You don't do that. You live by a principle, by a freaking code. So I'm in the kitchen, I'm watching this, and he puts them on him. He graveled, he said a few Italian curse words, maybe. I don't know. And, he mumbled to himself, and then he put them on the plate, and he starts eating them. I'm standing there, because what are you doing? And he figures he's giving me a lesson at the same time. He says, you pay for your mistakes in life, Teddy. I said, the freak, you sometimes throw them out. No. You got to pay for your mistakes in life. That night, I wanted him to go to the gym with me, right? Because he didn't go to the gym with me all the time. Because he was basically semi-retired, and it was so important for him. He's my mentor. He's my surrogate father in some ways. I want to make him proud. I'm busting my backside training all these fighters, pros during the day, amateurs at night. I want him to see what's going on. And a lot of times he wouldn't come. And then, he'd come maybe once a week. And it was a big deal for him to be there for me to show him what I was doing. And he was supposed to come to the gym this night. And he couldn't come. You know why? He was on the toilet bowl. Okay? Crapping out red stuff.
It was hotter on the way out.
And he hurt himself. And what's the moral to this story? The moral to this story, the point I'm making is a guy like Ferguson, who probably shouldn't have cut the weight. 3 weeks before the fight, in all seriousness now.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away from what he is. He lives by a code. It worked for him. It hardened him. It chiseled him. It punished him. But it's what it needed to be. That I live up to my obligations, my commitments, what's in front of me. And he was living up to that. I'm cutting a freaking weight like I had a fight. Mm-hmm. Just like Cuss is eating the eggs, even though he freaking didn't have to eat them. Because that's the code. That's the principle. That's what got him there. That's what got him there. And that mentality sometimes can bring you to great, and it did. Heights. Great heights. It could hurt you sometimes.
Yep.
It could bring you down sometimes. And this was one of those times. But he couldn't shake away from that.
Yeah. But to his credit, I think when he made the weight, because there was a little bit of Khabib was getting a little bit of heat because he was in Russia and he was honoring the, he said, look, I'm not going to come and fight. We don't know what's going on with the virus. He was being smart. And I don't think he had a firm date and an opponent yet in Gaethje, and it was the only thing in front of him was making that weight. So in his defense, I think he made the weight. I'm not,
listen, you don't have to defend him. I am not knocking him.
Oh, no, I know you're not. I just wanted to give it full context.
I'm applauding him.
Yeah.
I am recognizing him for being a special guy and for making himself that special guy. And this is the way he did it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that sometimes the things that make you great can destroy you. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you.
This just got announced that Ferguson broke his orbital bone in that fight, too.
No shock. Did you hear what Rob just said?
Yeah. That's the last question I've got for you is...
Let me just tell you, just to make sure you heard what Rob just said. It just got reported. Rob's on top of all this stuff. It just got, and for the sake of our audience, we try to be up to date on everything and be responsible with everything, obviously. If you guys are going to be good enough to watch this, we should be good enough to tell you the right things and the things that are out there to tell you. It was just reported that Ferguson broke his orbital bone during the fight.
Yeah, I had heard that, and that's what the last question I have for you is that at the end of the fight, when Gaethje hit him with a stiff left jab, did you notice Ferguson, he kind of shook his head like something's wrong. Like when it hit him, it was clear that something broke, something happened because the guy's been getting hit with bombs all night and hasn't been.
But it was also The Rock. It was also The Rock.
Yeah.
It was The Rock. Ken, I'll stick to that till I drop that right here, which might make a few people out there watch the replay of this. Actually,
when you saw that, when you saw that happen, what was were you thinking like, oh, something clearly was?
No, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to jump on that you're putting out there for me and say, oh, gee, a bone broke. No, I saw the blood though, so I saw something happen. If I thought in those areas, I probably would have been. I mean, like, just the collapse of something in his nose and like it's the last straw of it. I mean, after all this punishment, the dam finally broke, so to speak.
Yeah.
But my main thought was what I spoke about here, that The Rock got hit so many times, it broke. It broke. And now it didn't take a big blow to break it. It didn't take the sledgehammer. It just took leaning on The Rock to make it break at that point. It was a jab.
Yeah, and I thought that the ref did a great job because he could tell right away, oh, this isn't a normal reaction. He's shaking his head. He's almost not quite turning his back, but he's clearly like something has gone wrong. And you notice that when the ref stopped it, there wasn't an ounce of protest from Ferguson. Like clearly something was amiss because a fighter like that's not going to go out standing on his feet from a jab. So it was interesting that the way that thing came to an end, but nevertheless, what an awesome fight. Jeez, that was worth the price of admission for me. And you know what's great is that now they've got this set up down there in Jacksonville. They got another fight this Wednesday and another fight next Saturday. And I'm looking forward to those probably more than I was this one now, seeing what they put together. And yeah, awesome card. That's all I got. You got anything else before we sign off?
No, I think it was a good show. I don't always say that. I think we try to make them all good for you guys. But I think it was a good show, and hopefully the people think that, especially now because it touches on the first live sports that's been around for 2 months. We tried to tie it all up and cover it as well as we could cover it, being that it's the first. We try to do that with every show, but especially now with it being the first show back.
Yep. Well, listen, Teddy, this was a long one. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Like I said, there's another UFC event coming up this coming Wednesday as well as Saturday. I'm sure you guys will let us know what you think, but if you like it, we'd love to keep doing this. We know there's not a lot of content out there right now, but please, we value all the feedback and let us know what you think. Happy to keep bringing you guys this stuff. And Teddy, thanks for doing this, especially on Mother's Day. Appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, really. Because that should be said, because it's 3 hours earlier there. We already had our Mother's Day meal, and you haven't yet. You probably delayed it. You might get hit with part of it. I hope you don't. I hope part of it doesn't get tossed to you, but you have a beautiful wife, a beautiful family, so I'm sure they're understanding, but just tell them that we appreciate their understanding and allowing you to do this. And to all the mothers out there, even though you'll be seeing this after Mother's Day, we hope you had a great day, and we appreciate you. We appreciate you.
And with that, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for everyone for being with us. Take care.